Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, August 25th, and this is virtual lunch number 864. Our guest today is the extraordinary Iris Jones, the Chief Marketing and Client Development Officer at Akerman, and this is part of our series on fueling firm growth with UniCourt. So Iris, usually what we do when we get started is just to give the guests a chance to just know who's on, who her audience is. And I would love to just start that and start with Jeff.
Hey, Iris. Great to have you on today. Jeff Cox. I'm the Director of Content for UniCourt, a legal data as a service company.
Nancy.
Hi, Iris. It's so nice to see you. And I'm, thank you, Marketing and Business Development Advisor, and I specialize in content, social, and digital media these days. So that means lots of LinkedIn training and podcast launches and virtual presentation coaching. I'm so glad to see you.
Molly.
It's been a while. I'm Molly McDonough. I am the Senior Creative Services Manager at Catton and former editor and publisher at the ABA Journal, where I met Ari.
Scott.
Scott Chaffee. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration at Cohen, Clare, Lands, Greifer, and Simpson. We are the premier matrimonial firm. We represent high net worth and very high profile individuals. And I've been in this role and similar roles for more than 25 years.
Monica.
I'm Monica Sandler. I'm the Director of Customer Success at EstateWorks. We're a task-based workflow management tool for estate planning and probate attorneys. And I was on the conference committee for ILTACON 2023. So glad to be back at home, and I'm thrilled to be back on, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Joe.
Hi, Iris. Joe Scott. Very nice to meet you. I'm an attorney by trade. The last several years, I've been doing consulting for law firms and software companies.
Paul.
Hey, Iris. Great to meet you. I'm Paul Gudritis, CEO of Origami. We are an AI-powered client intelligence platform that uses machine learning and predictive analytics applied to firm data to help firms do a better job growing client revenues, preventing client churn, and improving partner cross-selling and cross-collaboration.
And Gore.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for joining us, Iris. I hope you survived the hour, because she's like going, oh, there's all these people and all of us are here, right? And people that tend to take over sometimes on Ari's call. So I'm Ann Gore. I am a legal technology consultant and information governance strategist. I work with small to mid-market law firms, helping them get their information governance projects over the fence.
Iris, so tell us about your background and the work that you do at Akerman.
Okay, I'm going to give you the broad brush, because I hope that we will have this as, this is more of I know it's an interview sort of dialogue, but at the same time, I hope other folks will chime in as well. And I welcome that, just so you know, everyone. Just to give you the broad brush, I started out my professional career like you, Joseph. I think you said that you are by trade an attorney, right, Joseph? I am as well. I practiced for 20 plus years. You figure out the plus. And I was a litigator and working in the public sector, started my legal career at the Texas Attorney General's office. I practiced under 3 attorneys general way back in the day. And from there, I went into private practice and litigated for many, many years. And I stumbled upon this opportunity to become a business development strategist, client team instructor. I worked with Bill Flannery at the WGF Institute. I'm based in Austin, by the way, Austin, Texas. And I had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with Bill. And then I just got one day after our team training as an instructor, training on client development, relationship management, I was tapped by Aiken Gump to come in and actually start their program. So while the program was 3 days, I consider myself day 4 and beyond. And so I went in-house, and then that launched, if you will, my second career as a client development person, business development first. And then as you know, that law firms back in the late 90s and in fact, early 2000s were bifurcated: marketing, client development, or marketing, business development. And we finally figured it out. They would make more sense to collaborate and share resources and put our heads together and work as a team collaboratively. So I was able to do that at several firms, and I currently do that at Akerman. For over 2 years now, I'm as Ari introduced me, the Chief Marketing and Client Development Officer. There's so much more to tell in between, but we only have an hour. So why don't we just take it at that? And I'm happy to share more, but there's a whole lot because I've been around for a long time.
Iris, amazing. I of course have tried to tell your story over the years and have learned so much from it. Is there a skill or a technique to sort of move from the practice into this, other unique discipline of being responsible for client development and marketing?
I don't think there's a magic formula for doing so. I think that it really, I think it is in part personality driven. And you clearly, when you gravitate from practicing law to business development and marketing, we know those practitioners, those partners have actually stepped in as a CMO or have actually supervised or managed, if you will, the marketing and client development department based on their experience as a lawyer. I mean, it's much more than just, oh, I know the law, but let's face it, we start there when we coach and we train and we support our lawyers. The first thing that we say to them is, please, before you go in to make a pitch or you go in to introduce yourself, learn who the client is, know your client, understand your client's business. How many times have we heard that? Millions of times, know your client's business. So it really is about, I think, an advantage for me. It's been my experience. Joseph, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. It's been my experience that knowing your client's business because you were your client or you walked in their shoes more than a mile is the first step. And even if you don't have the background as a practicing attorney, having the time or taking the time and the interest to really dig deep into what your internal client wants and needs, there's another segue into that as well. But sometimes we kind of sleepwalk through our day. And I don't want to digress, but I want to stay on topic here and on track with your question. I think that the segue is really caring and really wanting to be helpful and making sure that you understand that the litigation hat comes off, or the corporate lawyer hat, whatever your background is, comes off, and you are now in a service and support role. But what's great about it is you can be at the table having a conversation. You're not walking into the room and taking some kind of order and going, okay, would you like fries with that? You're really honing in on what their true need is and being an advisor. And I love the advisory role that I serve in and have served in, because not to sound like I know as much as the attorneys do, but the questions are quite different. When you segue from a role of practicing, you can actually ask those questions that aren't typically asked by a marketing person who's just starting out, or a business development manager who may be relatively new to the game.
So one of the things that always has come up on the, and especially we've had this amazing series on sort of marketing and business development leaders. You mentioned that you're in Austin, and Akerman has a number of offices that I understand in Florida, has, offices in different places. So you've also had the chance to work in various cities around the country. How much does a practice area or a firm's location impact the way it promotes its work?
Well, I think that was probably true 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. It was probably important. I don't think it's at all important or critical anymore. We have learned through the pandemic, through that shutdown period, we have learned to navigate and to basically provide services, not only no matter where we are, but also promote whatever location we need to promote without either being physically on the ground or attached in some way to that particular office. I hope I'm answering your question. If I got that, if I understand that, I just don't think that location really matters. When you're marketing, you have to understand that market. For example, I'm in Austin, we're tech. In some cases, they consider us the third coast when it comes to entertainment, but we're high tech, and that's the name of the game. It's a very hot game, as you know. Elon Musk helps with that by being heavily entrenched in our community with Tesla. When you go to Houston, it's a whole different ballgame. We're talking energy. When you go to Dallas, we're talking the financial services arena, investment banking, et cetera. So right within one state, you're talking about different needs and different industries that need to be served and supported. So it's not that you have to be in Austin to understand Austin. You have to understand the location, though. And I think that we make the mistake sometime of doing a one size fits all, where we just kind of do an overlay. You can't do that. Do an Austin overlay in LA. You can't do an Austin overlay in New York. You can't do an Atlanta overlay in Chicago. You've got to definitely be keen, just like I started out this conversation with you, Ari, you have to be keenly aware of who you're providing services to and where you're providing those services. And it takes a lot of research. And thank God we have great research tools and we have a lot of competitive intelligence available to us, and we need to use it. But here's the issue, will you take the time to do it? And that's what differentiates the it people, and I don't mean IT, I mean the people who really get it from the people who are still struggling to find those answers. There's no shortcuts. You got to do the work, and you got to really delve in, and you got to really listen, and you got to really want to understand, once again, your client's business from the inside out.
You brought up firm intelligence. How do you use data, client intelligence, law firm intelligence in your marketing today?
Very heavily. I'm not just talking talk, we walk it. What I was delighted about when I joined Akerman over 2 years ago is that we had embedded in our marketing client development department 3 professionals who are part of what we call a competitive intelligence team within MCD, within marketing client development. And I was amazed. I thought, are you kidding me? I've got at my disposal 3 people who are dedicated solely, full-time, solely to this. It was my first experience with that. I don't know what your experiences have been. We usually have research services or information services, which used to be called law library. That was outside our department. We also have an incredible research services department as well. But to have 3 people who are really focused in on and coordinating and collaborating with our client development managers, with me, with the director of marketing operations, with the media director, all of these folks are helping us do a better job serving our internal client through competitive intelligence. We create what we call IBs, intelligence briefings, and they're quite extensive. They're not brief at all, quite frankly, but we brief the attorneys either before their meetings, before their final presentations, when they're competing on an RFP or an RFI. We brief them when they're trying to determine, should I create this client team or should I create that client team? Is this client right for a team? Should we dedicate our resources to this? What is the potential? We don't go in blindly and go, well, it sounds like Morgan and Lewis is doing a lot of work for them. Maybe we should try to compete. That's really general. We never go general. We go really detailed, and we have our reasons. I believe that lawyers are the world's biggest skeptics. They're from Missouri, the show me state. They want to see the proof. They want to see the evidence. And that's what I think also benefits me, is I've been used to, preparing for trial, and briefings, and I present my case to them exactly that way. Give them their reason why. Give them what the benefits are going to be to not just them, but more importantly to the client. They love it because that's their world. And if you present it in that way, and you've got very, very compelling evidence that this is what they should be doing, or this is the strategy. And of course, we don't tell them what to do, we recommend. But when they hear the advisory recommendations that's based on sound evidence, they absolutely love it. So I'm really pleased to say I'm batting 1,000 with firm leadership, because I don't take them anything that is willy-nilly, loosey-goosey. I make darn sure I have my ducks in a row and I know what I'm talking about, and I have the backup, because lawyers are going to ask you 1,000 questions, right? So that's my approach, and it's been working.
I had coffee this morning with a partner at a law firm from Miami, and that part, we were talking about Miami being a tech center, but the idea of Austin trumping Miami was sort of accepted, that Austin really is sort of the second, is it fair to say? I guess it's respectful to call Austin the second tech hub. You'd have to, you have to give that to Silicon Valley, but Miami creeping up is not coming anytime soon. I think it's the traffic.
It's hot too. It's our second largest office. New York's #1 now. Miami's #2. We were founded in Orlando, and for 85 years, we were literally focused on 9 offices with all of our lawyers in Florida. And then in 2004, that changed.
Iris, thank you also for participating in the CMO report that we recently produced with
sure.
Baretz+Brunelle. One of the things that you mentioned in there was the importance of having, firm leadership buy-in. So just to kind of follow on the point that I think you were kind of getting at in your last response, how important is it for marketing and business development teams to have that buy-in from leadership for using data? And what does it look like when you don't? I think that's something that we saw potentially from different firms, is firms that didn't have that buy-in had a different experience in using data.
I think it's absolutely essential, Jeff, and thank you. I thought my survey was so anonymous, but you outed me in a good way, but it's okay. I think that it's absolutely essential. We all have been there, done that, where we have had complete and total support and where we've had zero. And you know what happens to those initiatives or those ideas or those new launches? They die on the vine, no matter how hard you work and how much energy you put into it and how many resources you put toward it. It doesn't work because everyone is looking, and you know this, the term flavor of the month or flavor of the year, that that term. Some lawyers think, okay, well, last year it was this year it's that, next year it'll be something else. I just need to hold my head in a certain position, lay low, play dead, and they'll be gone. And then the initiative will also be gone. So without that firm leadership to give that endorsement, if you will, I think that you're just lost. And I would suggest that you don't even launch anything without it. Because once again, you're going to be exerting yourself, exhausting yourself, and you're going to go, what happened? What happened is you didn't get the buy-in from the top and you didn't get the message to be pushed down to everyone that it is supported by, endorsed by firm leadership. It's just a waste of energy.
And I guess a follow-up question that would be is how important is proving ROI, for continuing to have that buy-in from leadership? And that was one of the topics at ILTACon that I heard all the time for people talking about using technology and data. You have to continuously prove the ROI, especially to your lawyers.
100% agree. I have been historically, and it's part of what I said earlier about the proof in the pudding and also demonstrating through evidence. I think that demonstrating ROI has to be continuous. I don't believe that we need to throw a lot of narrative and a lot of pages of stats that are meaningless at our leadership or our practice groups or our sector team leaders. I think that it needs to be digestible. It needs to make sense. Some people get caught up in all the fancy words. I'm very plain spoken and very straightforward. I believe in giving them very clear-cut information that they can digest right away. So the test is when you prepare an accountability report, which I've been doing for years, and I'm a firm believer in it. Because the attention spans have shrunk over the years, my report used to be 54 pages, but I always had an executive summary and charts. Because if they don't read anything but those 5 pages, you have their attention. And if they need backup, because I'm a big believer in evidence, proof, and the detail, because some people need to see the underlying data before they can really believe that this really happened. I started shrinking that down because it's really exhausting, but you also want to make sure that you give your team an opportunity to not to brag on themselves, because that's a divisive measure, if you will, but to get together and develop some benchmarks and to determine what does success look like, or what does improvement look like. It may take you 3 years to be successful, if you will, but if you could just move that needle, it's very encouraging and it's very stimulating and motivating for the team. So now I continue to have the key highlights report every 6 months. And then at the end of the year, we have a key highlights report and our narrative that outlines what we have done, not what we marketing client development have done, but what has the firm done through our efforts. So we always keep the focus on the attorneys. We always keep the focus on the firm, because they're not interested in us going, look what we did for you. We created 95 press releases in 6 months, and only 40 of them may have been picked up. No, that's not the kind of stuff they need to see. So we have developed our ROI to demonstrate the value, which ends up being directly or indirectly responsible for new clients, new business, or business growth, if you will, attorney profile raising through media, et cetera. I won't bore you with the details, but there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of thought. But we always ask ourselves this question when we look at a chart. At a glance, what does this tell me? That's the test. And if you can't figure it out, then we throw it out or we rework it, because a story must be told in that chart. It's a snapshot. If the snapshot is meaningless, irrelevant, immaterial, we take it out. We want to give them a picture of what is going on bam, right then and there. And we test it out. We have focus groups we ask them, what does this tell you? And we get all kinds of interesting responses, but we now have honed our skills to know what the attorney wants to see and what the attorney wants to hear. And if they don't want to hear it or see it, I don't care how much time we spend on it, they're not going to care. So it's a very salient, very, very focused ROI. But Jeff, I can't say enough about it. ROI is vital because you know what? Firm leaders may endorse you, but if you can't demonstrate the value of it and the benefit of continuing it and getting budgeted for the next year or increasing that budget for the next year, it's going to die on the vine whether the firm leadership endorsed it or not. From 2021 to 2024, I can guarantee you it will not be supported to that level without the ROI.
Iris, how much of that is automated, that data gathering? How much of that is automated and how much of that is just you're having to visit each of the sources and pull the data?
That's an excellent question. It's probably 30% automated and the rest we gather. But here's what happened the first year is we did not want to just have somebody go back 11 months and try to recreate or to gather information, because it's not as reliable as if you know that from one day to the next or 1 week to the next, this is going to be part of a bigger report. So we made it easier on everyone. So that's why I talked about the highlights. So the first time I did this, I asked each client development manager and I asked the different groups in my department, whether it's the events team, the media team, the content team, et cetera, our competitive intelligence team, to just provide the highlights. What is memorable? Nancy, if I were to ask you, tell me the most memorable movie you've seen in the last 5 years, you might say, oh my God, do I have to only pick one? I have three. So that's what I said. What's the most memorable highlight? What are you most proud of? What can we really say that, man, did we hit a home run? And they came up with 2 or 3. And I said, no more than 2 or 3. People got so excited. They were like, oh my God, can I just add this 1/4 one here? I'm just, So we came up with a very short list and then we built out from there. So starting the new fiscal year, everybody knows that it's going to be expected. So it's grown and grown and grown. We have a hard time editing down what we're going to include. But yeah, a lot of it is still a manual kind of thing. But it's easy to do when you only want to hit the highlights, something that the attorneys really care about. And it's not about us, it's about them.
Right. It has to be, or they'll eat us alive. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Iris, I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you think about, one thing that I hear a lot when we talk to firms is that, there's like a limited amount of resources you have to focus on a very large amount of client accounts. So I'm curious to hear how you think about where you should put your focus in terms of resources, time, research, and actually what data sources you find very valuable in terms of, focusing on key clients.
Yeah, that's exactly right. None of us, I don't think any of us have ever had the luxury of having too many resources and just nothing to do. It's always, what are we going to do first? And I'm a really big priority list person. In fact, we just completed our priority list for our media team. And we just have to think of the world that way. We want to do everything. We want to run around with our hair on fire, putting them out and getting this. Oh, this one needs that. That is so chaotic and crazy. And it's burnout time. When you try to do that over time, it's just not sustainable. So we always step back and say, we know that there are those users who will never even get a frequent flyer number. And then those who are diamond medallion every single year, because they're just, they just rack up the time and suck all of the time out of our department. And then we have to decide which ones are worth it and which ones are, really asking us to do much more than what we're supposed to be doing. And I just want to give you one quick example. For media, we know that we have an outside PR agency, Infinite Global, who we absolutely love, been working with them for 2 years. And we know for a fact that there's no way we're going to have every single lawyer mentioned in the media, quoted in the media, and not that they should be. We need to prioritize those, not just the practices, but the topics that are hot and where do we want to be? So what we do to make sure that we're not just living in this little vacuum world, Paul, what we do is we actually prioritize our list and then run it by membership firm leadership. I meet with the chairman every other week. We have a risk call every day, but I meet with the chairman one-on-one every other Thursday. Just had my meeting yesterday. And that's one of the agenda items is this is what we see as the priorities. And we base it on CDMs weighing in, the client development managers. We base it on what we're hearing from the attorneys. We base it on what we read. Now, by the way, that's a big, big deal. Reading and knowing. Don't just guess at it. Educate yourself, research, absorb. And then we base it on our prioritization of that media list. Where do we want to target? Because we can't do everything and we don't have enough. Our retainer's not big enough for IG to go after every single pursuit. Okay. So we have a priority list and that has been run by the firm leadership. So now guess what? We have their buy-in on our priorities. So if anyone were to say, well, I would like to do this, or I would like to do that. And it's like, okay, you're number 865 on the list, get in line and we do hear you. We thank you, but these are the priorities. And we are very realistic about it. The same thing goes for the other priorities when it's time to talk about what kind of attention we'll give to the biggest client teams or the biggest key accounts that we have and what that looks like. We just don't let anybody go on automatic pilot because they're a big revenue generator. They say that you really need to pay attention to those clients that really have the potential to grow and to expand, but you're only getting, they're only like 237 on your client list. But if you don't pay attention to the ones that are feeding you, the 20% of clients that are giving you, generating 80% of your revenue, again, 20% of your clients typically generate 80%. I hope it's a little more balanced than that, but you need to ask that question. What percentage of your clients are generating 80% of your revenue? And if you don't pay attention to that, and to them, they will not be your clients for very long. So it's a balancing act. And I'm glad you asked the question because we have to prioritize those that we sometimes take for granted because they've already been there. We can't put them on automatic pilot. We have to really take care of them. 80% of our revenue is generated by that 20%. At the same time, we have to keep our eye on growing corn. And you don't grow corn overnight. You've got to plant those seeds and know that down the road, you're going to have stalks and you're going to have, a nice bumper crop. But you have to, it's a balancing act. But I always check in with my firm leadership. I don't take anything for granted. I think I'm smart. I think I know how to read. I think I know how to, assess. I know how to analyze data. I don't ever say I have the answer, or this is because it's my perception. It's the right perception. It's check in, get buy-in, and then act.
That's great, Iris. Thanks. Couple of themes really resonated with me there. One was, thinking about revenue growth potential in addition to just the size of the client, how big they are, and then just the kind of ongoing consensus building and feedback from leadership and all the different stakeholders. So thanks so much for that response.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Paul. Thanks for asking.
I'm happy to keep it going if others have questions.
I was just say, Iris, are you sure you're not from here in Indiana when you talk about corn like that?
I'm from Ohio.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
I was going to say that the analogies are refreshing, right? Because people just want to hear somebody that speaks their language and doesn't speak ROI all day long, right? Like you are speaking ROI, but you're not throwing it in their face. And so they start, I'm a big one on using analogies or quotes because then people walk away and go, oh yeah, I'm growing corn. I'm supposed to be growing corn, right? And I think, to the point that you pay attention to the top 20% of your people, I think you also have to focus on the next layers down. So they become part of your 25%. They become part of your 30%.
Yes.
The goal is to keep pulling up more clients to become a greater part of your revenue. Right?
Indeed. That's right. We have to keep our eye on that. I agree with you, Ann.
I have one question. How much do you think that when you started out, now you've met with success, but when you first started out, how much do you believe, and I have a sense that I know the answer to this, your experiences as a practicing attorney allowed you to gain momentum in where you were headed? Like if it was Ann Gore and Iris saying the same story, do you think you got further because of where you were and what your experiences were?
I think that for the most part, not always, Ann, because, I don't want to bring up the obvious, but there was a time when I was a young Black lawyer. I'm now an older Black lawyer. So, credibility is based on a lot of things. I know that there were times when I was going into federal court and the bailiff would go, you can't come in here. You can't come beyond the banner because it's just for lawyers. And I was like, well, I am a lawyer. I've got my Merritt Schaefer Brown suit on. I'm dating myself now. And this Brooks Brothers, times 50 years ago. And the bottom line is, for different reasons, people give you credibility. I think that I earned as I became a much more mature lawyer, and got my foot in the door and talked about what we were going to do, strategy, and then it worked. That's what I think, that the proof is in the success. When you can give somebody a success story or help them succeed or help them achieve what they're seeking to do, that's when the buy-in comes in. Realistically, I think that because of my background and because of my history, my experience, being a lawyer by trade, even today, I think it helps a lot, because the attorneys will come at me in a different way. They'll come at me and seek advice as opposed to, dismissing. But you have to earn that, and I did. But I think that it did help me to compile my strategy and to execute on my strategy, because I had that background. I used it to my full advantage. Absolutely.
Well, congratulations on putting us all forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I feel like you and I and many of us have had this conversation about what makes some people, like, how do you help people overcome the resistance? Some people are driven to embrace business development. I personally find it like a fun adventure, even the times it doesn't work. And some people are so nervous about it that they avoid it completely and don't let their own gifts really shine. How do you help bring that out of folks?
Well, that's a fabulous question, Ari. Here's the thing. I think we tend to forget, we in a service provider or support role, we forget that just because a person is a successful lawyer, successful litigator, M&A, PE, specialist, and is very successful, makes a lot of money, that doesn't mean they know how to develop business. Back in the day when I practiced, it was the cigar, the scotch, the golf course, it was all those things that are still quite relevant, but you have to have more because there's so much competition. I think that we need to keep in mind that attorneys are sometimes reticent to listen to you or to be coached about BD, because honestly, we think that they know what they're doing. And sometimes they don't. So mapping out a plan of action, taking a look at their top 10 clients and the revenue they're generating, and then going back conducting a revenue history of maybe 5 years to see if they're increasing or decreasing their fee generation for that one client. Do that for 3 or 4 of them. You can get this information from financial services and just take a look to see what's happening and approach them not with, oh, you know what, you are really effing up, or you're really failing, or you're really, losing market share. Is my judgment. You need my help. You approach them in a way that you have some solutions or you have some ideas. Find out, have they visited that client in the last 2 years? I'll give you a quick story. I wanted to help. The chairman told me I needed to help this person because their book was dwindling and they were in some hot water with their hourly rates. Their hours were down, not the rates, but their hours were down. And so I was in the room with this person and I was asking just some basic general questions. And I didn't come in like, oh, I'm here to help you. Yeah, the chairman told me you need some help. I just asked some general questions to get to know this person, making sure I was deferential and kind and respectful because we're the support team, right? And I said, this person, you're going to this conference and this person's like 50 miles from the conference. How long has it been since you've met with the client? Did it make sense to do a little quick detour, grab a rent car and go see her? It happened to be a female general counsel. She said, well, I've been working with her for 10 years and I've never met her. And I said, okay, you've never met her. This might be a great opportunity, especially since the work was like, nosediving. I said, it's easier, as you know, I always say, as you know, I'm not telling you anything. It's easier to make a mistake when you know someone and they feel close to you. It's easier to fire someone that you've never seen before than it is to fire someone that you have a bond with, some kind of relationship with. And she was looking at me like, do you think that might be why the work is drying up? I said, oh, no, I don't think that's why, but it could be part of why it is. I really don't know. Of course it was why. But I said to her, why don't we try this? And I gave her a few more tips. I won't digress terribly, but I gave her a few more tips about what to do when she got there, and prepared the report for her. At the time, it was Advantage with LexisNexis, those reports. And I gave her the report. Pulled out a few nuggets. I did some Google searching. You learn a lot from just Googling the day before you go on a trip and hit news. You could just have a conversation about one or two things that happen with the company. You're like, oh my God, do it on the way to the meeting. So I gave her those tips and tools, and she started going every year after that. Work just went back up in a vertical trajectory, and she was happy as could be and thought I was, some guru. But the bottom line is, it's just practical thinking. She thought, well, if I can get work and not ever see the woman, why do I need to bother to go on a trip? It's just something that's simple. So it was gently suggested and nudged very, very gently, because lawyers have egos like everybody else. And we want to make sure that we don't offend them. But a lot of times they just don't think about it because they're on the treadmill, on the hamster wheel, if you will, cranking out those hours, answering client calls and addressing client needs. We're the ones who should be helping them proactively, not just waiting for them to call us and ask for, a RFP prep or something else. We need to be thinking about them. And it's really easy to get through all of that and just cut to the chase for just looking at the top 10, and saying, look what's happening. Revenue history is easy to gather, 5 years of it. And then you can tell the story or ask the questions that make sense to them. And I did that with another guy, and he was so arrogant. He said, I don't need your help. I said, well, okay. And I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? And I asked a few questions, he said, do you know how much money I make? And I said, yes, I actually I do. I said, it's not about the money you're generating. It's about the fact that no new matter has been opened for this client in 7 months. We typically get 5 to 6 new matters a month. That tells me that something is happening. And I don't think because of the size of the company that they just ran out of work. I said, there's some other firms that, are shoulder to shoulder with you. And here's a speech that was given, and here's some more information. So I dug some information out that told him about the market share. And I said, yes, you're bringing in 4 million, but that's only 2% of their legal spend. And he's like, how did you know that? Where'd you get this? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, here's how I did it. I gave him the methodology, showed him all the background, lawyers need the proof. And then I said, here's what I want to ask. May the chairman and I go visit the client for a client feedback meeting? And he begrudgingly said yes. And oh, did we learn a lot. So here's the thing. You come at them with information that means something to them, not to you. And you provide it in a gentle way. So the following spring, I gave a report at the partner meeting on 9 client teams that were doing incredibly well. But I didn't tell the story myself. I asked 3 team leaders to take 5 minutes, 3 slides to tell the story. What has happened since you started a team? By the time that meeting was over, the business portion of the meeting was over, this gentleman came up to me and said, I need you. I need your help. I go, okay, when would you like to meet? He goes, right now. He had a bunch of guys over in the corner waiting to meet with me. He started 2 client teams a day at the partner retreat. You had to prove to him that you knew what you were doing, you knew what you were talking about, and there's evidence of the success, the ROI. As a result, his teams were incredible. One was Coca-Cola, one was NASDAQ. And I'm telling you, we measured everything and he was over the moon. We became great friends, from I don't need you to I need your help. It can happen, but we have to be very careful how we take care of our lawyers and how we approach them. But business development, some of them are just really not sure what to do. And it's, the proof of their success is not just the fees generated. There's a big story to tell behind those numbers.
One more, Ari, on the topic, because
Sure.
Iris was mentioning some specific metrics, which I always get really excited about. You mentioned, Iris, like using financial data and revenue trends, personal relationship touch points, like how often are we meeting them, or when was the last time we met with them? You've mentioned, media activity and PR. I'm curious to hear, like, what are the most interesting new data sources that you've thought about using at your firm to help, identify growth opportunities and do a better job retaining clients?
We are testing out, identifying opportunities for our clients. We look for opportunities for our lawyers to speak, serve on a panel, or write an article. We actually have been testing out offering to help elevate I'm giving out my secrets now, elevate the general counsel, because they also want to have a very high profile. You know, GCs move around a lot these days, as you know, but they also want to elevate in the eyes of their board. You know, they have someone they have to report to and account to. So we've been testing out, working with them to not only nominate them for awards, we all do that, but providing them with opportunities to serve on panels or to write an article and offer them our help to write an article in an area and in space they want to be well known in or better known in. So we're testing that out as it's like a partnership. And we've got a couple other things that are just percolating that I don't think I have enough evidence of that working well. I do know that what I just described to you is working incredibly well because we've seen the revenue go up with those where we take super good care of our GCs, and we're seeing an increase. And we think it's directly related to how we take care of them. You know, beyond just the work, we are giving them added value. That how do you measure that? Well, how do you account for the fact that this relationship and this closeness has resulted in 20% more work, which results in substantially more revenue. So that's one of the ones that I'm most proud of right now that is working well.
I love the concept of supporting and promoting the client as a strategy for building the client's relationship versus just supporting and promoting the firm. So that's really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer has a question.
I apologize in advance. I've had some internet connection issues, so you may have already touched on this topic, but are you studying cross-selling and cross-marketing efforts across the firm? Because we always know that that's a really good way to increase the work you're doing for a client.
Yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right, Jennifer, and I'm glad you were able to get on. The cross-marketing is so key, especially when you enjoy a footprint like ours. We're from LA to New York, down to Miami, Chicago, Atlanta, 4 offices in Texas. It makes complete sense. I think that a lot of firms still operate in a siloed fashion. We're doing our thing in LA, we're doing our thing in Chicago, and it doesn't make sense. So we use that same strategy. I don't know if you heard me talking about using this a strategy of taking a look at and assessing. I know that other marketing departments do this, so I don't want it to sound like it's something I invented, but studying the firm, what's happening in LA. What I did is I pulled information from all of the offices. We have great offices. You want to visit them all, but pulling the information, who are our top 25 clients in LA, Denver, Salt Lake City, all the way across. And we could just do a cross-reference of which ones do we share. And then when you drill down a little farther, you can say, okay, for LA, number 27 is Denver's number 1. And you start connecting the dots. And then you start asking the questions. Why is it that we're not doing, once you research the client, remember what we talked about earlier is knowing the client, knowing the client's business. Oh my God, do you know how much money they spent litigating XYZ in LA last year? We have a class action group. Or how about what's happening in Miami? And we're doing the same thing in Dallas. So we start connecting dots that way, because it's okay that if you don't have a client team that crosses all of your offices, but when you start connecting the dots, because not only are you not serving that client, but you certainly should be introduced, because maybe they're spending money to have a client fly across the country or practice pro hac vice in a court that you could do it right there because you're local. So we do all those connections of the dots, and it's so much fun. It's sort of like Hollywood Squares, but a little more sophisticated on steroids, but it really is fun. And the lawyer's eyes, they just light up when you're saying, hey, I was thinking, what about such and such? Have you ever considered so-and-so? You don't go in and go, hey, I don't know why you guys aren't doing this or aren't doing that. You ask the question, have you ever considered XYZ? And they're like, what? We do? Oh, we are? I didn't know that. The funny story I got to tell you is that years ago, I'll mention the firm, and you probably heard this happen more than on more than one occasion, 2 groups of lawyers showed up at the same beauty contest. And they were like in the lobby, in the reception area. What are you doing here? Well, we're here to present. Well, so are we. And they didn't know that they both pitched for the same work and
Oh
they
my
were both shortlisted. How embarrassing.
Wow.
But these things happen when you're large and when you have multiple offices. You must find a way to talk. And guess what? We should be the operator, the Lily Tomlins connecting everybody to each other because they don't have time to do all that research. It's fun. I love research. It is a lot of fun. And you connect those dots and they love you forever because they're like, wow, we have thinking people. We have smart people who are doing all of this for me, making my job easier. Don't wait for them to ask, do it. Do it and come up with that golden nugget. And that's immeasurable. You start tracking that fee generation starting that day when they start working together that way. And that's an ROI story.
Has the firm found a way to financially reward the person who owns the client for making those introductions? Sometimes there's a hesitation about making that introduction because my client's happy with me. I'm doing a good job. I don't know if this lawyer in this other office is going to mess it up for me or not, or take work from me or get credit that I would have gotten. Do you find that at Akerman, they found a way to incentivize those introductions?
You know what, that not specifically directly, Jennifer, but let me just say that we have less of a problem than most because of the way we have set up our origination and our credits, if you will. It's a little bit different story. I haven't seen any, I've seen some battles. I've seen some very bloody battles over the decades that I've worked as a lawyer and also in this space as BD and marketing. We don't have that problem. We really don't. Everybody understands, and I think it's from the top down, it starts from the top. We understand that the rising tide floats all ships. Forget the boats, they're too small, ships. And we know that if we all generate revenue working together, that it's going to benefit all of us. And that's how we look at it. I've heard over the many decades that, oh, I don't trust my partner. Oh yeah, that sounds really absurd. He or she is your partner. I don't trust them to do the work well. That's called don't touch my turf. Don't come on, onto my territory. Thank God I'm at a firm where we don't have those issues. And it's quite refreshing.
Iris Jones, everybody. How wonderful. I mean, I'm inspired as always. I posted a link to our other interview because I always feel so fortunate to learn from you. Thanks to you, Iris. Thanks, of course, to UniCourt and to our friend Jeff for supporting this series on fueling firm growth. What a privilege. I hope everyone has a great weekend.